What do you say to your children after you've been gone for 10 years? What words could ever fill the empty chair at birthdays? The bleachers you never sat on. The bedtime stories you never read. Sorry doesn't fix it. I love you doesn't erase the silence. There are wounds that apologies can't touch. Robert Hayes wasn't a monster. At least that's what he told himself. He wasn't abusive. He wasn't violent. He was just overwhelmed, tired, broken in places he never admitted. A man who thought walking away would make things easier. He told himself he needed space. He told himself he'd come back once he sorted things out. He told himself a lot of things that weren't true. When he walked out, his daughter Lily was 5. She still slept with stuffed animals and drew pictures of her dad in crayons. His son Noah was 3. He couldn't pronounce spaghetti, but he could say "Daddy" perfectly. Then Daddy disappeared. 5 years passed. Then 10. By the time Robert finally stopped lying to himself, Lily was 15. Noah was 13. Teenagers with hurts they never learned to speak about. A mother who carried the weight of 2 parents. A family that had learned to survive without him. Robert wasn't just absent. He was a ghost haunting birthdays and holidays, a silence that grew heavier every year. And deep down, he wondered, is it too late? Can a father like me ever be forgiven? Can God fix what I destroyed? Or is this the end of the story? But God has a way of meeting us in our lowest moments. Sometimes He waits until everything we've built collapses, so we finally look up. Before Robert ever found Jesus, he hit rock bottom. He had bounced from job to job, delivery driver, construction helper, dishwasher, night shift stalker. Every job ended the same way. Missed shifts, depression, alcohol, running away from responsibility the moment it felt heavy. Running was all he knew. Running was the only thing he was good at. He lived in a small, dim studio apartment, the kind with peeling paint and a refrigerator that hummed louder than the TV. Bills piled up on the counter. Half-empty beer bottles on the table. Laundry he never folded. A life that smelled like regret. But the worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was the guilt. He tried to distract himself. Bars, work, noise, anything to avoid one simple thought. I abandoned my own children. Sometimes he'd pull out an old shoebox filled with memories. Lily's drawings. Noah's first birthday photos. A Father's Day card written in shaky preschool handwriting. I love you, Daddy. He couldn't look at it without breaking down. He'd close the box quickly, shove it back into the closet, and drown himself in another drink. His ex-wife, Maria, never called. Not out of spite, but because she had finally accepted he wasn't coming back. She raised the kids alone, working 2 jobs, doing everything Robert once promised he would do. On the nights he thought about calling, he couldn't bring himself to dial. Shame was a chain around his throat. But one night, the night everything changed, he found himself sitting in a small bar. A Tuesday, rain outside, 5 people inside. Nothing special, except for the TV. The bartender flipped through channels and stopped on a live stream of a church service. The sound wasn't even loud, but one sentence sliced through the noise in Robert's heart. The story of the prodigal son. Robert froze. He hadn't heard that story since he was a child, maybe never fully understood it. But tonight, the words cut straight through him. The pastor continued. A young man who abandoned his father, took everything, wasted it, destroyed his life. But when he came back home, ashamed and broken, do you know what the father did? He ran to him. He didn't wait. He didn't punish him. He didn't lecture him. He ran, threw his arms around him, called him son, celebrated his return. Robert's hands trembled around his glass. He swallowed hard. That story wasn't about the son. It was about him. Not the son who left, but the father who abandoned his family. The pastor's voice continued, stronger now. Some of you think you've gone too far, done too much, ruined too many lives. But Jesus came for you. Luke 19 verse 10 says, "The Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." Not the perfect, not the religious, the lost. Robert felt heat rise in his chest, a burning, a stirring, something he hadn't felt in years. Conviction, a whisper that wasn't coming from the TV, but from somewhere deeper, a voice he had ignored his entire life. He stood up, left cash on the counter, and walked out into the rain. 3 blocks away, a church glowed softly, lights still on long after service ended. He didn't think, he just walked, as if something was pulling him, calling him, leading him home. He opened the doors. The sanctuary was empty, quiet, still. He walked to the back pew, sat down, and put his face in his hands. For the first time in 10 years, he prayed, if you could call it that. God, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if you can hear me, but I ruined my family. I abandoned my kids. Is there any hope for someone like me? Then, a hand on his shoulder, gentle, strong, an older black pastor with kind, weary eyes. Son, he said softly, Jesus specializes in hopeless cases. And Robert broke. He sobbed, years of pain collapsing all at once. I'm worthless. I'm a coward. I walked out on my babies. How can God forgive that? The pastor sat beside him and spoke the words that would redraw the map of Robert's entire life. The same way he forgave David, Peter, Paul, not because they were good men, but because Jesus is a good Savior. The pastor continued, your kids may not forgive you right away, but Jesus can soften hearts, heal wounds, restore what was broken. But first, you must surrender your life to Him. And that night, Robert surrendered, fully, completely, no turning back. Jesus gave him something he hadn't felt in a decade. Courage. Courage to face what he'd done. Courage to try to make it right. Robert left the church that night feeling lighter and heavier all at once. Lighter because something inside him had changed. Heavier because now he knew what he had to do. He had to face his children. For 10 years, he hadn't been a father. He had been a memory, a disappointment, a wound. Every birthday he missed, every Christmas absent, every question that went unanswered. He had created pain he could no longer ignore. But Jesus had done something inside him, something he couldn't quite explain. A new resolve, a quiet strength, a conviction that running was no longer an option. He woke up the next morning with a clear thought. Go see them. The idea terrified him. What would he say? What if they slammed the door in his face? What if they yelled? What if they cried? What if they didn't recognize him? He stood in front of the mirror, looking at himself. His beard was untrimmed. His clothes were worn. He looked older than his age. 10 years of guilt etched into his face. He barely recognized the man staring back, but he whispered a prayer anyway. Jesus, go with me. I can't do this alone. He showered, shaved, put on his cleanest shirt, and drove toward the neighborhood he once called home. Every street felt familiar and foreign at the same time. He passed the park where he once pushed Lily on the swings. Past the grocery store where he and Noah used to buy popsicles together. Every memory was a reminder of what he had lost, and what he hoped, maybe, could be restored. He parked a block away from the house. His heart pounded. He almost turned around. Twice. But a quiet voice inside urged him forward. He took a breath and knocked on the door. Maria opened it. Time had changed her too. Lines under her eyes. A tiredness that only single mothers truly understand. But also a strength. Stronger than when he knew her. She didn't say a word. She just stared at him. "Hi," Robert said softly. Maria crossed her arms. "What are you doing here?" I need to talk. Not about us. About the kids." Her expression softened a little, but only a little. "They're not home. Noah's at practice. Lily's at her study group. They have lives now, Robert. Lives you weren't in." "I know," he said, voice cracking. "And I don't expect anything. I'm trying to make things right." Maria sighed. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. She was tired. Tired of doing everything alone. Tired of carrying the weight he left behind. Tired of being disappointed. "Are you sober?" she asked. "Yes." "Are you working?" "I start on Monday. A construction job." "Why now, Robert? After 10 years?" His eyes filled. "Because I met Jesus, and he told me to come home." Maria blinked. She wasn't expecting that. Not from him. Not ever. He continued. "I know I hurt you. I know I hurt them. I know I can't fix everything. But if they'll let me, I want to try." Maria let out a slow breath. "They're older now. They're angry. Hurt. You don't get to walk in and act like nothing happened." I know. And I won't. I have to talk to them first. I can't force them to see you. That's fair. For a moment they just stood there. Two people who once loved each other, now separated by a decade of silence. I'll call you, Maria finally said. But her tone wasn't cold. It wasn't warm either. It was cautious, careful, like a door cracked open just an inch. Robert nodded. Thank you. He walked back to his car feeling emotionally drained, but also hopeful. A small hope, fragile, but real. That night, he prayed again. Not out of habit, but because he didn't know what else to do. Jesus, please soften their hearts. Please give me a chance. 2 days later, Maria texted him. They want to meet. Tomorrow. At the café on 9th. Robert stared at the message for nearly a minute. His breath caught in his throat. He gripped the phone until his hand went numb. Tomorrow. He was going to see his children. He didn't sleep that night. He kept rehearsing what he would say, how he would apologize, whether he should hug them or wait for them to make the first move. In the morning, he stood outside the cafe 10 minutes early. His hands shook. His legs felt weak. Then he saw them. Lily, now 15, tall, confident, but with walls in her eyes. Noah, 13, headphones around his neck, guarded, distant. They stopped walking when they saw him. No one spoke. Robert felt the weight of 10 years settle into his chest, but he managed to say one sentence. Thank you for coming. They sat. Awkward silence filled the space. The kind of silence heavy enough to suffocate. Finally, Lily broke it. Why did you leave? No anger. Just pain. Pure raw pain. Robert swallowed hard. I was selfish. I was scared. I was weak. And none of it was your fault. Noah looked up for the first time. Do you love us? Robert's voice cracked. With everything in me. And I always have. I just didn't know how to be the father you deserved. Lily wiped a tear quickly, pretending she wasn't crying. Noah stared at the table, jaw clenched. Why now? Lily asked. Because I met Jesus. And he showed me that running doesn't fix anything. He told me to stop hiding, to face what I broke. The kids exchanged looks. Not angry looks. Not forgiving ones either. Confused ones. Hopeful ones. Scared ones. Lily spoke quietly. We don't trust you. Not yet. I understand, Robert said. And I don't deserve your trust. But if you'll let me, I want to earn it. They didn't hug him. They didn't smile. They didn't forgive him. But they didn't walk away. And sometimes, that's where redemption begins. The meeting at the cafe didn't end with warm embraces or instant healing. It ended with something much quieter. A crack in the wall between them. Small, fragile, but real. When Robert got home, he sat in his car for several minutes, hands still trembling. He replayed every second of the conversation, every word he said, every expression on their faces. He didn't know if they would ever truly forgive him, but they didn't walk away, and that was enough to keep going. The next day, Maria called him. "They said they're willing to meet again," she said. Not excited, not angry, just stating a fact. But it needs to be slow. Their choice, their boundaries. "I understand," he replied. "And thank you." She paused for a moment. "You looked different yesterday. Happier, calmer." Robert exhaled. "That wasn't me. That was Jesus." Maria didn't comment, but she didn't dismiss it either. They agreed to meet once a week. Short meetings, public places, no pressure, just presence. The first few gatherings were awkward. Lily barely spoke. Noah answered everything with one-word responses. Robert sometimes left feeling like nothing was changing. But Jesus was working beneath the surface. And healing, real healing, rarely happens fast. One week, Lily asked him a question he wasn't expecting. "Were you scared when you left?" Robert swallowed hard. "Terrified," he said honestly. "I wasn't running away from you. I was running away from myself." She looked at him quietly, like she was trying to see if he meant it. She didn't respond, but the question itself meant something inside her was opening. Another week, Noah confessed something. "Mom said you were sick. Not like a cold, but inside. Like not healthy." Robert nodded. She was right. "Are you still sick?" The boy's voice cracked slightly, revealing more vulnerability than he meant to. Robert leaned forward. "I'm healing. Jesus is healing me. And I'm working every day to be better than the man I was." That moment changed something between them. Noah didn't smile, but he nodded. A small gesture. A gesture that meant everything. Robert started making changes in his life. Real changes. He got up early. Showed up for work on time. Learned a trade. Stopped drinking. Joined a men's Bible group. Started counseling. He wasn't just trying to be a better father. He was becoming a different man. And the kids noticed. They never said it out loud. But Maria did. "You're more stable," she told him one afternoon. "More grounded. This is the man I always hoped you'd become." Robert didn't know how to respond. For years, he had believed he wasn't capable of stability. But Jesus was reshaping him from the inside out. One Saturday, Robert asked Maria if he could come to one of Lily's basketball games. She hesitated. "I'll ask her." When she called back later that night, her voice sounded surprised. She said yes, but she wants you to sit in the back. She's nervous. Robert smiled softly. "I'll sit wherever she wants. I just want to be there." He arrived early and sat quietly in the far corner of the bleachers. He didn't want to embarrass her. Didn't want her friends to ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. When Lily walked onto the court, she glanced at him. Just for a second. A tiny, cautious look. Not a smile. But not rejection either. When she made her first basket of the game, Robert clapped softly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to show her he was there. After the game, she approached him. Slowly. "You stayed the whole time," she said. "Of course. You didn't leave early. Or disappear. I won't do that again." She looked at him for a long moment, then said the first hopeful words she ever offered him. "Maybe we can talk more next week." His throat tightened. "Whenever you're ready." Another week, Noah surprised him too. He asked Robert if he could help with a school project. Something about building a simple wooden model. Robert had experience in carpentry from work, and Noah knew it. When Robert showed up that afternoon, toolbox in hand, Noah looked almost embarrassed. "Mom said, you might know how to do this." Robert smiled gently. "I'd love to help." They worked together silently at first, but as they cut the pieces, sanded the boards, assembled the base, Noah started talking about school, about his friends, about video games, about little things. But little things matter when bridges are being rebuilt. When they finished the project, Noah stood back proudly. "This looks good," he said. "You did most of it," Robert said. Noah shrugged, but there was a hint of a smile. A small victory. A seed of trust. Still, the journey wasn't perfect. There were setbacks. Days when the kids seemed distant again. Moments when guilt overwhelmed Robert. Nights when he wondered if he really deserved a second chance. One evening, after a difficult conversation with Lily, where she admitted she still didn't know if she could ever forgive him, Robert drove straight to the church. He sat in the empty sanctuary, heart heavy. The pastor approached him quietly. "Tough day." Robert nodded. "Some days I feel like I'm making progress. And others, like nothing is changing." The pastor sat beside him. Restoration isn't a straight line. It's a series of small miracles. Trust Jesus with the process. You're not the same man you were. Your kids can see that. Let time do its work. Robert wiped his eyes. "I just want to be the father they needed." The pastor smiled. "And you're becoming him, not through your strength, but through Christ in you." Robert breathed deeply, and something inside him settled. He realized the truth. He wasn't trying to earn forgiveness anymore. He was learning to walk in grace. Weeks turned into months. Not perfect months. Not easy months. But months filled with small steps forward, and occasionally painful steps back. Lily was the harder one to reach. She remembered more. She remembered birthdays he missed. School plays where she scanned the crowd and never found his face. Tears she cried quietly because she didn't want her mother to worry. She remembered trust broken again and again. Yet, she kept showing up. Not because she trusted him, but because something in her wanted to. Something moved her to give him another chance, even if it scared her. One afternoon she asked him, "Why didn't you come back sooner? Why didn't you call? Didn't you think about us?" The question cut deep, not because it was harsh, but because it was true. Robert took a long breath. I thought about you every day, but I was ashamed. I didn't think you would want me anymore. I didn't think I could face what I'd done. Lily looked at him quietly. Her defenses didn't drop, but they shifted. You could have tried. I know, he said softly, and I'm sorry. I can't change the past, but I'm here now, and I won't leave again. She looked away, but this time she wasn't trying to escape the conversation. She was trying not to cry. That night she told her mother, "He's different. I don't trust him yet, but he's different." Maria nodded knowingly. That's what Jesus does. Noah's turning point. Noah had been quieter about the whole thing. He didn't talk much about feelings. He didn't ask big questions. He just watched. He watched his father show up on time. Watched him be patient. Watched him listen more than he spoke. Watched him apologize without making excuses. And slowly, piece by piece, his heart softened. The moment everything changed came unexpectedly. One evening, Robert took Noah to the hardware store to buy supplies for a school project. As they walked through the aisles, Noah suddenly grabbed Robert's sleeve and froze. Up ahead, a group of boys from Noah's school were staring at them. One of them whispered loudly, "Is that your dad? I thought he left when you were a baby." Noah's face flushed with embarrassment. He tightened his jaw. He looked down at the floor. Without thinking, Robert stepped in front of him. Calm, steady, a different man than he once was. He looked at the boys and said, "I made mistakes, son, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't defensive. It was fatherly, gentle, strong. The boys walked away awkwardly. Noah stood still for a long moment. Then he whispered, "You called me son." Robert swallowed hard. "You are my son." For the first time in 10 years, Noah hugged him. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Something inside Robert broke and healed at the same time. The breakthrough with Lily. Months passed. They talked more, shared more, laughed more. But Lily still hadn't forgiven him. Forgiveness is never forced. It comes slowly, like dawn breaking over a long night. One afternoon, during a walk at the park, Lily suddenly stopped and said, "I prayed last night." Robert looked at her, surprised. "You prayed?" "For the first time in years," she said softly. "What did you pray for?" She took a breath. "For you." Emotion rose like a wave inside him. "I prayed that if Jesus really changed you, he would help me change too." Robert's voice trembled. "What changed?" She looked at him, really looked at him. "I don't hate you anymore." Tears filled his eyes. He tried to speak but couldn't. She stepped forward and hugged him. A real hug. Long, tight, healing. The hug of a daughter who finally felt safe again. The day everything was made new. One Sunday morning, months later, Robert invited them to church. He didn't expect them to come. He didn't even ask twice. But when he walked into the sanctuary, he saw them. Lily, Noah, Maria, sitting on the back row, waiting for him. He almost couldn't breathe. Something holy filled the room. Something only Jesus could orchestrate. During worship, Lily put her head on his shoulder. During prayer, Noah stood close to him. For the first time in their lives, they were standing together in the presence of God. During the pastor's message, he said, "Restoration isn't the work of man. It is the work of Christ. No relationship is too broken for him to heal." Robert felt Lily's hand slip into his. Noah leaned closer. Maria watched with tears in her eyes. And Robert whispered a silent prayer. "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for bringing my family back." After service, they all went to lunch together. Not as strangers, not as broken pieces, but as a family being knitted back together by the hands of God. Maria looked at Robert across the table and said, "They're healing, and so am I. This doesn't fix everything overnight, but it's a start, a real start." Robert nodded. "I'll be here every step of the way. I'm not running anymore." Lily smiled softly. Noah laughed at something he said. And for the first time in a decade, the Hayes family felt whole again. Not perfect, but whole. Held together not by willpower, but by grace. Robert's final reflection became the message he shared with others. "I spent 10 years running from my family, but Jesus ran after me. When shame said I was finished, Jesus said, 'Come home.' If he can restore a father like me, he can restore anyone."